Welcome to the Storytellers, the radio show and podcast that features those who choose to leave their mark on the world through the art of story. I'm your host, Grace Sammon. I look forward to our time together today. Now, let's meet our storyteller. Welcome to the Storyteller's microphone. Jenn Bouchard's debut novel, First Course, was published in 2021 by Touchpoint Press. It's been the recipient of 9 awards and wonderful recognition. It's been given the finalist award in the Women's Fiction category of the American Fiction Awards and the Independent Author Network Awards. Her short stories have appeared in multiple places. She's joining us today from the suburbs of Boston, where she lives with her husband and her 2 teenage children. Luckily, she is an avid cook, and that fills right into her amazing writing. So we'll talk about food and writing as well. She's also a Red Sox fan, and somehow she does all of this while still doing her full-time job, where for 22 years she has been a high school social studies teacher. Jenn, welcome to the Storyteller's microphone.
Thank you, Grace. I'm so glad we were able to connect today.
I am as well. And I have to, first of all, thank you for teaching. My work has always been in the area of high schools. So I spent almost 30 years doing high school improvement across the country. And it's got to be the hardest job in America, not being the consultant, but being the teacher. So thank you for what you do every day in the classroom.
Oh, thank you. It is really something because, I know my content so well now, and I know how to talk to teenagers really well. But it is a job that brings challenges every day. No day is like the day before.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. So I want to talk to you starting out about your path to storytelling, because it was not on your bucket list. It was not on your radar. From everything I've read, you kind of got the idea from doing this, from listening to an author interview?
I did. I started, I went to go hear Elizabeth Gilbert speak in person. It was right around the time of Big Magic, and she was very inspirational. And I had just finished a major volunteer position. I was the president of my college's alumni association for 2 years. And it was a position that was all encompassing. I spent a ton of time working with this alumni council that I led, going back to the campus in Maine where I had been as an undergrad, and getting to know people from so many different decades that had gone to my college. And I absolutely loved it. And when it was over, there was a big hole, and I had to try to figure out what to do with that. And I was getting closer to 40, and I don't know, I think maybe a little bit of a midlife crisis going on at the same time. I was like, well, I'm not going to stop teaching, but I need to figure out something else just for me. And one day we were at the beach. It was towards the end of the summer. I was getting ready to go back to school. And I said to my husband, I think I'm going to try to write a novel. And he's like, okay. And I hadn't written any kind of fiction since I think middle school in any sort of serious way. So I started actually going to hear a lot more authors speak and reading a lot more interviews, listening to them. And that really helped me a lot, just to get a sense of their process, their story, their path. And as you know, everyone's path to publication looks different.
Absolutely. So you got the idea, and then it's set in coastal Maine.
Yeah.
And this is something I want to talk about. I want to talk about your book, but I love, if you will, the idea of genre. It's something I'm becoming more intrigued about. It's something I think we're all as authors learning more about. You have a very special niche for your genre. Talk about that.
So and it wasn't really with any kind of intention, but I am an avid cook. And, as I was starting to develop these ideas and thinking about what I wanted to write about, my husband said, you've got something there. You've got something different. I mean, there's plenty of people who write about food, but not everybody does that. And I am drawn to coastal stories. I live in the suburbs of Boston. We are not that far from the coast. We spend a lot of time on the coast. I went to college in Maine, as I said, and the coasts of Maine and Massachusetts and parts of New Hampshire are very special to me. And so the idea of setting stories in these places while also incorporating this food aspect, I'm very drawn to it. And I think, people say, write what you know, and this is what I know. And so I think, at least for now anyway, this is what I'm doing.
And you actually identify your genre as coastal fiction.
Coastal women's fiction, and with a strong food focus to it. That's where I'm at.
How did the food aspect really tie in? I know you're an avid cook. Was that always the case?
I started, I grew up in a house with parents who both cooked, so I grew up eating very good food, which I think is part of it, and I have an appreciation for it. But I was a fairly picky eater growing up, and and then after college, when I started having to figure out like more about like feeding myself, feeding my friends. I started exploring it, probably not particularly well at first, and then it was really Ina Garten who changed everything for me. She's my hero. And
She's amazing.
She's amazing. And I think that there's a lot of things I just didn't grow up enjoying eating, things like Brussels sprouts and butternut squash and stuff like that once I started cooking them the way that she told me to, I was like, well, this tastes pretty good. And so I started, just becoming more adventurous in what I'd like to eat and, kind of working my way through her books the best that I could. And I think that has allowed me to be able to, write food descriptions and cooking descriptions and things like that, because I do it as well. And I find that when I am writing a lot, I actually am cooking a lot at the same time, because I want to make sure I'm coming up with new ideas to include and thinking about what would these characters eat at this point. And it was funny. There was one time, I think it was last year, he came downstairs and I said to my husband, I said, we're having chicken empanadas tonight because I need to write about these. And he was like, okay.
Well, it's a whole nother type of creativity, right? And I think that when we are creative, we tend to be more creative.
Yeah.
So it's fun to do that in the kitchen. Your answer makes me think of that wonderful movie, Julia and Julia. Yeah. So I just think you need to do an Ina and Jenn book.
Well, there is someone on Instagram who did that, and he did it really, really well. So his handle is store-bought is fine. If you've never seen it before, his name is Trent. He's delightful. We've interacted a little bit on Instagram. So he did it. So but I do feel like, I have certain things that I go to with hers, and then she's got a new book coming out this fall, and I'm really excited about that. But especially in the wintertime when it's freezing in Boston, barefoot in Paris, I work my way through a lot of those recipes.
Let's talk about First Course, because that really is the marriage of so many of your loves. I was drawn to your book because of the themes of reinvention and also the idea of you never really know what door is going to open or close for you. And those are themes a little bit in my own book, but my characters are much older. So I loved finding that in your book. Can you tell us more about First Course and why those themes?
Right. So, in First Course, there's a lot of things that happen that are very jarring in the beginning of the book. The main character and her older sister lose their parents in a tragic accident, and I'm not giving anything away because it's all in the back cover. And her older sister, Janie's older sister, Alyssa, found out that her husband's been very openly having an affair. Janie loses her job and her boyfriend, who was her boss. So there's a number of things that happen in all in one day, and it's pretty awful. And so Janie and Alyssa's two daughters end up back at their family's beach house in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, which is just outside of Portland, so it's in southern Maine. It's just a beautiful spot. If anyone who's listening has ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. But once they're there, they have to figure out kind of what happens next. And of course, there are a lot of different things that get thrown their way, that some of them are obstacles and some of them, as you said, are welcome doors that open for them. But I think for me, I've always been drawn to reinvention. I've always been drawn to considering second acts in life. And while writing this, it became my own second act, which has been really fun because I did find this was just sort of an experiment of mine to see if I could write this. It took me 2.5 years to write a first draft. I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't taking classes on craft or anything like that. I was literally, as I told you, listening to author interviews and reading author interviews. But I have found that I really enjoy it. And it's something that I want to keep doing. It's something that I have kept doing since then. So it has, while writing about second acts, I found mine.
I find that is so true. When I was writing my novel, I thought I was done. I'd done the big career job, I had raised my kids, I had helped my parents move on in life. And I just thought, okay, I'm done. I'm going to write the book. And then I never anticipated everything. And
Right.
it sounds like your characters taught you something.
They did,
Is that
absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, it was that there are all these possibilities out there, and it might not look the way you think it's going to look, and that's okay. There are different paths to the things that we want in life, and sometimes we don't know what we want, and it presents itself in strange ways, and it surprises us.
I think that's such a great message in your book. So you said that you continue to write, and what is next for you?
So I launched first course last June and immediately started drafting Palms on the Cape, which I had been working on, in a very kind of brainstormy sort of way, and then eventually I'm a plotter, not a pantser, for
Mhm.
those of you who are writers out there. And I had plotted out, a whole timeline and developed characters and all that. And I started drafting Palms on the Cape last summer. It took me 6 months to draft it, which was much quicker than 2.5 years. So I was very happy
Wow.
about that. And I am querying it right now. I am trying to see if I can get an agent this time. I didn't get one last time. I published with a small traditional press, Touchpoint Press, unagented. But I'm seeing if there's anyone who's interested in working with me. And kind of throwing it out there and see what happens. And like I said, I did write some short stories sort of in between as well.
I'm very impressed by that. I did write my first book in 6 months, but I have to tell you, every other book has taken so much longer. So I want to talk a little bit too about the idea of being agented and unagented. This is something, the varied paths we have all found to publishing, traditional, hybrid, small press, big press, independent. Why are you interested in an agent now?
So I'm interested because I just kind of want to see where this can all go. And I feel like I owe it to myself um, because distribution of books is challenging. And there's only so much that we as authors can do. And there's only so much that small presses can do in terms of distribution. And so, a lot of books are sold on Amazon. And I did want to get into some bookstores. To get into bookstores, I had to do that on my own, and I did. I did get into some bookstores in the Northeast, which was,
Mhm.
a lot of work on my part, but fantastic. Um, some places are more amenable to working with a small press author than others. And but the story I heard from a lot of bookstores was, you have a distribution issue. You're with, your press is too small for us, and things along those lines. And so it limited some events I could do, and things along those lines. So I'd like to be able to reach more readers, be able to have events in more places. And if you have an agent who's able to connect you to someone, to a publisher who can work on distribution, that's great. But I also think if that doesn't work out, um, it's fine. Like we said, there are so many paths, and working with a small press unagented was a lovely experience, and I had a fantastic editor. I agreed with every single edit she gave me. So it's really just about the possibility of having the book in more places for me.
I think that whole, what I call the back of the house of our author work, is astonishing to anybody. Well, it's astonishing to us, but I think it's even more astonishing to people who
Right.
are not in it. Agented, unagented, the idea of accessibility, whether you
Right.
do an audiobook, which became so much more popular during COVID, what are those multiple ways to get our story out? And then why do we want to get that story out? For me, it's very much about being able to talk to readers about the transformations. And I think that that has been the most surprising thing to me about being an author, is the back of the house.
Yes, without a doubt. It's a whole new thing you have to learn about. And I did a lot. I did a lot to educate myself ahead of time. I went to some seminars. I luckily gotten to go to the Grub Street conference, Muse in the Marketplace, right? But what was it? April of 2019. So I signed my contract in January 2020. So I did learn a little bit at some seminars. I went to all these seminars on, publicity and marketing and things like that, just to better understand it, because I didn't really know. And then I also read Courtney Mom's book before and after the book deal, which was super helpful. And also just leaning on the 2021 debut Facebook group. They've been fantastic. So there's a lot of networking and things like that, but I'm still learning new things every day.
Oh, I totally agree with you. We talked a little bit about genre, but we're also very much, and this is something I think new to authors, or at least new to me in authors, is this concept of branding.
Yeah.
And you look very well branded. Can you talk about your brand?
I think just, thinking about positioning First Course in places that it might be attractive to customers. I did an event at a cookware store in Maine, in Bath, Maine, which is fantastic. And we had biscuits from the book, Janie's Biscuits, there for samples, and that was wonderful. I've got the book for sale in a couple of gourmet shops, which is really nice. So, kind of what we were talking about earlier about playing up the coastal element, the food element. I do have things going for me in that way. So that's helpful too. And just, down to the swag I've given out, I have spatulas, First Course spatulas. I have my LL Bean boat and tote bags that I use for raffles. So I think, having this attachment to Maine and to food has been helpful for the branding aspect. And I think moving forward with Palms in the Cape, when we eventually get that where it needs to be, attaching to Cape Cod and finding opportunities there, I think that also helps with the branding too.
Another whole aspect of being a writer. One of the things that I enjoyed listening to you in some of your other interviews and doing a little bit of research is you kind of have a book buddy who helps you in your writing.
I do. My friend,
I love that.
Yeah, she and I have been friends since we were 16, and we overlapped. We were both Navy brats. We overlapped for 1 year in Washington State, west of Seattle, west of Puget Sound, and
Whidbey Island.
No, actually, if you know where
beautiful.
Bainbridge Island is, on the other side of the sound, and then it's just to the west of Bainbridge. You take a bridge over, and then you're in what they call the Kitsap Peninsula. There's a submarine base over there. So, so we lived there, and we stayed in touch after I moved, and then when I had just finished grad school for teaching, she was starting grad school for teaching in Boston, and then we would hang out all the time, and have just stayed in touch over the years. And now, she's a teacher and I'm a teacher, and we live, 25 minutes away from each other. So it's just funny the way life works out. She's an English teacher, and she is not a writer, but she is a voracious reader, and she has a really good eye for things, and is able to read my writing and help me see things that I wouldn't see myself, and really help me see it from a reader's perspective, which is really helpful.
I always think a book buddy or a beta group of readers is the thing that can help authors really bring that crispness to a story, because we have it so real in our own heads that we sometimes don't see we're missing a piece that is so clear in our brain, but the reader goes, huh? So that's wonderful. Is she helping you with Palms?
Yes. Oh, she did. Yeah. I dropped it on her front porch. When was this? This was after I had edited it myself the best I could. I dropped it on her front porch in January, with a bottle of wine, and said thank you. And she's definitely cheaper than any editor out there. So she had her way with it over the next few weeks, and then we got together, and she took great notes, and we went through a ton of stuff, and then I went back and made all my edits based on that, and started querying in March.
Well, this is going to be great to read this. I can't wait till it comes out. As we're beginning to close today, I'd love for our listeners to know something maybe quirky about you that they're not going to find on your website or in your Instagram posts.
So I'm trying to think of actually how to incorporate this at some point. So, once again, we write what we know. Here I love to cook and I make all sorts of things, including breakfast things. I don't like eggs. I don't like to eat eggs. I'll put them in things. I'll make French toast. I'll make, creme brulee, all these things, all sorts of baked goods, but I don't sit down and eat scrambled eggs or hard boiled egg or anything like that. I just don't like them. So I developed a character in Palms on the Cape, Carlos, who's like kind of the main guy. He's like me. And so they actually develop a breakfast special, the Carlos special, in the book at the beach bar restaurant, based on his dislike of eggs. So I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna do something with this eventually, and it will be Instagram worthy. But I just haven't quite figured out how I'm gonna do it yet.
Wonderful, and we'll wait for that. Thank you for being a guest today, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Grace. This was great.
This has been a copyrighted episode of The Storytellers by Authors on the Air, Global Radio Network, and Grace Sammon. Thanks for being with us today. That concludes this episode of The Storytellers. I'm so glad you could be part of the story today. I hope you share the stories, tell your own, and come back for another episode, because when our stories are told, everything changes. I'm Grace Sammon.